Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, I'm Bill Steele, and you can see I'm retired from ICU. I've been teaching there modern Japanese history from the 1980s. I'm now still doing research, particularly on the Meiji Restoration, before and after the Meiji Restoration, that's 1868. And I still love to walk and talk, and today Zoom about Japanese history. Oops, let me see if I can make it go forward. Over here, okay. Well, today I'm going to tell you what I think about Ueno, when I think about Ueno, and as a historian, of course, I think about the history of Ueno. It's one of the world's great parks. It's an open green space. It has fountains. It has a forested area. It has fabulous cherry trees, temples and shrines, museums, concert halls, a zoo, a pond. You can go boating there. Ueno has it all and more. It's one of my favorite places in Tokyo, and it's especially known for its cherry blossoms. It's April 1st, 2021 today. The cherries are already past full bloom. The rain of blossoms as they scatter down is also beautiful, but also somewhat melancholy. Perhaps that's fitting for this year, the year of the pandemic, a time when people's lives have been so terribly disrupted. Most cherry blossom events, even at Ueno, have been canceled. No eating and drinking, no spreading of mats below the flowering trees, no merrymaking, no loud noises, but you can walk silently and slowly through the park, masks on, keeping your social distance, and you can think about Ueno, past, present, and future. As a historian, I like to study links between past and present. And thinking about Ueno today, and about Ueno in Japan during this year, when our lives have been so upset, cut off from families and friends, and the news of the disturbing infection numbers and deaths here in Japan and around the world. Yes, this has been 2020, 2021. This has been a terrible year. The future is uncertain. The cherry blossoms, the beautiful cherry blossoms, may give us some hope. But when will people be able to celebrate again? As a historian, all of this reminds me of another terrible year. More than 150 years ago, that's 1868, the year of the Meiji Restoration. You might be surprised to think of 1868 as a terrible year. Let me just go to one slide more. Knowing what happened after 1868, we now think of 1868 as a major turning point in Japanese history, the turning point between pre-modern and modern Japan. 1868 is celebrated as the birth year of modern Japan. But for the people of Edo, that's the old name for Tokyo, experiencing 1868 at that time, and of course not knowing what's going to happen in the future, 1868, KO4, was an extraordinarily trying and difficult experience. It was a year marked by fears and anxieties, uncertainties, a bloody civil war, famine, floods, fires, economic dislocation, social unrest. And in the spring of 1868, just as the cherries were about to bloom, Edo was occupied by an invading force from the south, the Imperial Army. The ruling Tokugawa family was overthrown, martial law was declared, and there was resistance. And in the end, a bloody battle took place. Here you can see Saigo Takamori's statue at what the site of Ueno Park today, which was then the headquarters of the resistance, a bloody battle took place on July the 4th, 1868. This is the famous Battle of Ueno Hill. Thereafter, into the summer and then into the rest of the year, Edo was renamed Tokyo. Outsiders from southwestern Japan took over control of the city and of the country. It was a year in which people's lives were uprooted, and as yet there was no new normal. The 1868 cherry blossom events were canceled. The people of Edo complained that they couldn't enjoy their cherry blossoms as they had in the past. There was no eating, no drinking, no spreading of mats. Does that sound familiar? Well, that's the story I want to tell you today. Perhaps you all know that the great warlord Tokugawa Ieyasu, after winning the Battle of Sekigahara, that's back in 1600, he assumed the title of shogun. The date then is 1603. And this marks the beginning of the Tokugawa shogunate that ruled Japan for the next 260 years until 1868. By the middle of the 18th century, Edo had grown to be the world's largest city, a population over 1 million. But when Ieyasu began his rule in Edo in the early years of the 17th century, the castle was in ruins. It was surrounded by mosquito-infested marshland. It was not a very promising beginning, and Ieyasu and his successors began the process of transforming the physical place, the physical space, into a political and economic center of Japan. But Ieyasu also realized that this newly rising city would require a cultural center. That cultural center is right here. One of the centers here is Kan'eiji temple. Let me tell you a little bit about this. This is a mural that you can find very close to the Saigo statue. Ueno was a religious and cultural center of the newly rising city. It was the site of the great Kan'eiji temple, which you can see here. It was built in 1624, designed by a Buddhist monk named Tenkai, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a minute. And this is based on a woodblock print by Hiroshige in 1830s. And this is what the area looked like before the Meiji Restoration. And the large temple with the blue roof over here is Kan'eiji. And all around it are a multitude of lesser temples and pagodas and other religious buildings. The area was a major religious and cultural center. But nearly all of these buildings, including, of course, the great Kan'eiji, were destroyed in the Battle of Ueno Hill in the summer of 1868. Here's what Ueno looks like 10 years later, 1878. 4 years after, this area had been transformed into Ueno Park, Ueno Koen, taking the New York's city Central Park as a model. This is based on a woodblock print by Kawanabe Kyosai, and the statue of Saigo Takamori that we saw earlier is not here yet, but we can see some old things here, the Red Benten Shrine and the Shinobazu Park. Here is a Daibutsu, and here's Kiyomizu Temple over here, and the Toshogu. There's a number of the older buildings that somehow managed to survive. So this park preserved aspects of Japan's pre-1868 past, but it also became the showcase of a new modern Japan. This Western-style building that you can see up here is actually located right on the very site of Kan'eiji Temple, the main building. And this is the main entranceway here. It's later replaced in later replaced by the Tokyo National Museum that remains there today. Um, so this is the kind of physical transformation. But as I said, Ieyasu not only thought to create this into a political and economic center, but also a cultural center. And to that, he relied on the services of a Buddhist monk, Tenkai, who was placed in charge of remaking Edo into a religious and cultural center. And he encouraged, here's Tenkai over here, note his dates. He lived to be a good 108 years old. He encouraged Tokugawa leaders to introduce aspects of aristocratic, that is Kyoto-style culture, to what in the early 17th century seemed the God-forsaken place. He designed and built Ueno, Kaneji in Ueno in 1624. It was a sort of scaled down copy of Enryakuji in Kyoto. Enryakuji was located to the northeast, which is where you can protect the center of the city, which is the Imperial Palace, from evil influences from the northeast. So it is, Enryakuji is on the northeast of the Imperial Palace at Hiezan, whereas Kaneji is placed at Mount Ueno, Ueno-san, to the northeast of the shogun's castle. And it was designed to protect the Tokugawa family and the residents of Edo from possible evil spirits from the northeast. And the temple occupied almost all of what is now Ueno Park, including the zoo, including the area that's now Ueno Station. And at one time, some 35 other temples and sub-temples were established. The entire area was filled with religious buildings, gardens, ponds, and other cultural sites. Some of these include a copy of Kiyomizu Temple. From Kyoto, there's a kind of a miniature Kiyomizu Temple. A borrowed landscape from Lake Biwa, and its Benten Shrine is recreated as Shinobazu Pond and its Benten Shrine. You may know that Tenkai also designed the mortuary and temple complex for Tokugawa Ieyasu after he died in Nikko. But there is a Toshogu, a Nikko type memorial to Ieyasu in Ueno as well, the Toshogu, the Ueno Toshogu. There's also a Daibutsu. This is all that's left, just the face. Over the years, earthquakes and fires and so forth have destroyed it. And finally, what was left as scrap in 1941 or 42 was melted down to make into bullets and guns and so forth. But what's left there is actually a Daibutsu, not the Nara Daibutsu, but the Kyoto Daibutsu, which is even larger than the Nara Daibutsu today. Well, several of the buildings survived earthquake, fire, and war, and the Civil War of 1868. And they are among, I think, Kiyomizu is said to be the oldest building in Tokyo. And they help us to imagine Edo's past. And it was also Tenkai that we have to thank for bringing cherry trees to Ueno. In 1632, he arranged to have 100 cherry saplings brought from Yoshino, again, the famous sites of where you go to, and the aristocratic poets would all talk about the cherry blossoms of Yoshino. He brought saplings from Yoshino and Nara to plant on the grounds of Kaneji, making Edo's first cherry blossom viewing spot. At first, only the warrior elite could enjoy these blossoms, but gradually, certainly by the early 19th century, it became open to the masses. This is the Saigo Takamori statue, and I think you all, this is often kind of a iconic image of Ueno Park. Today, I'm not going to look at so much at the past of Ueno, but the point of 1868, where Ueno and Kaneji played an important role in the Meiji Restoration. It was a Civil War battleground. That was the Battle of Ueno Hill, and a date easy to remember, July the 4th, 1868. Now let's look at this statue of Saigo Takamori. Saigo, it's basically right at the end, what used to be the main gate entrance to Kaneji. You go upstairs, you're at the level area, and you walk all, and this is up on top of the hill here. Saigo is coming originally from Satsuma. It's one of the domains that resisted in the overthrow of the Tokugawa regime. He was a military man. He was a leader of the imperial army. He is one of the heroes of the Meiji Restoration, and he's often and usually depicted in military uniform. But here he has only one short sword. He's dressed informally. He's with his dog, perhaps as if he was out hunting rabbits in the Satsuma countryside. Saigo's statue was placed here and unveiled in 1898. That's 30 years after the attack on the Shogitai. He's looking, and often statues you want to see where they're looking at, what's their direction. He's looking in the direction of the imperial palace. It's celebrating him as an imperial loyalist in the Restoration, but omitting any reference to the rebellion that he led against the Meiji state in 1877. That's the Satsuma Rebellion. That act of rebellion complicated his legacy, and a choice was made to diminish his image as rebel and warrior, and to diminish the violence and bloodshed that accompanied the Meiji Restoration. Nonetheless, the place where he stands today, where this statue is exactly the place where he and his men fought and won the day, possession of the Ueno, guaranteed success of the new imperial government. And I just wanted to mention this book here by Sven Salar on Men in Metal, which includes, it says a topography of public bronze statuary in modern Japan, but includes a rather large section about the Saigo statue. The statue here of Prince Komatsu is also the more typical military. He was actually the representative of the imperial family and took the actual command, but the real fighting was under leadership was under Saigo Takamori. Here you can see he is the military man here, where here Saigo is dressed more in kind of casual clothes. Well, the Battle of Ueno Hill lasted only one day. And this is a scene here from a woodblock print that is basically, you can see the black gate here and this fight, and here's Kaneji Temple. This is basically the site where the Saigo statue is. It was deadly. It set fire to the northeastern sections of Edo. The pro-Tokugawa forces had their headquarters in Kaneji. They fought to the bitter end. And this is the place where the statue of Saigo Takamori is today. And at the end of that day, the end of July 4th, 1868, it was a gruesome sight. Bloody corpses everywhere, fires still burning. It was hell on earth. When you go up there now, it's kind of hard to imagine what it was like in the past, in 1860, on that end of that day. Just behind the Saigo statue, you'll find a memorial to the Shogitai dead. Here is a memorial to the hundreds of pro-Tokugawa warriors who lost their lives fighting on the losing side. And it's right behind the Saigo statue. The men had banded together to form the Shogitai, that is the squad of righteousness. And at the time of the battle, these men were considered traitors. They were considered enemies of the court, and orders were issued that their bodies be left exposed and not given proper funerals. But some Buddhist monks secretly cremated their bodies and buried their ashes. And it was only in 1881 that survivors of the Battle of Ueno Hill received permission to erect this memorial. But even then, the inscription on the tomb simply reads, "This is dedicated to those who died in battle." But since that time, members of the Shogitai have become known as tragic heroes, of dashing young men who fought to the death against all odds. And they are the subject of popular novels and anime television and so forth. And the memorial attracts much attention, almost as much as Saigo statue, but many people not fully understanding, knowing the significance of the place as a Civil War battleground. Now, let me just go a little bit deeper into this. Let's look at events leading up to the Battle of Ueno Hill and pay special attention to the experience, the feelings, the mental state of people in Edo, many of them who were not only troubled by, they couldn't go cherry blossom viewing that year. Okay, but worse, they feared that the world that they knew that their world was about to come to an end. The events of 1868, one after another, disasters and war and bloodshed and so forth, suggested the beginning of Mappo, the latter days, the millennial fears that the world as they knew it was coming to an end. In many ways, there are sorts of resonances to what many people feel today. In Japan and around the world, worried about the worst case scenario of the pandemic confronting us. In the spring of 1868, as the imperial army approached Edo, many commoners, fearing warfare, fled their city to the countryside. A political cartoon, and I like to use political cartoons. These are called fushiga, sort of satirical political cartoons from that time. This is, we don't know exactly when it is, but in just around the third month, or just around the early April of 1868, it helps us imagine the thinking of Edo commoners at that time. It's anonymous. It was probably issued in early April 1868, just as the cherry trees were blooming. It's called Ukiyo Tochu, on the road to the floating world. Rumors of war caused many people to pack up their belongings and flee to the countryside. The imperial army was approaching, getting closer and closer, and it was attacking from the Tokaido, from the Nakasendo, and from the the other one. Name doesn't come to me right now. The three past the were going to converge on Edo. The cartoon shows people at a crossroads, not knowing which way to turn. In a sense, it reflects the confusion and the panic of many people in Edo at that time, confronted with the real possibility of death and destruction, literally the end of the world. The sign over here on the right side says, "This place is called the Field of Courage, Dokyo no Hara." And a drinking party is underway. The cherry trees are in full bloom over here. A text box over here explains what's going on, pointing to this wife over here. The wife of one of the men, enjoying himself drinking and dancing, asks her husband to stop and consider their position. He pays her no attention, but tells her to close up the house and set off by herself to Move Away Hill. And going up here, Move Away Hill. Hanging over the revelers is a forbidding black cloud, dark cloud. This is the Yami Kumo. Hanging over them, the black cloud. And two others are walking in opposite directions on Rumination Bridge. Where to go? Should I go this way? Should I go that way? They're racking their brains about which way to go forward or back. In the center of the print is a signpost. Go left for Panic Park. A man with a large wicker basket on his back is holding his wife's hand, while another man is pushing a heavy cart up the hill. Climbing up Move Away Hill are cargo carriers and men with large packs on their backs, and one old man with a walking stick. You can see him up here. According to the text box and up here, it says, this slope leads away from the land of comfort that people have become accustomed to and passes over Hardship Summit down to a lonely and desolate place. Whether it will lead up to Mount it says, whether it will lead eventually to Mount Taihei, to Mount Peaceful, seen in the distance, is unclear. Probably not. This destination appears to be a floating world, an ukiyo, accessible to one only in one's dreams. The print purports to show people on the road to the floating world, ukiyo dochu. But will anyone actually make it to Mount Peaceful? This and other 1868 political cartoons contrasted present-day realities and fears with the ideal of the floating world, a carefree world in which people lived in comfort and with no worries about the future. Townsmen with some education would immediately recall the definition of ukiyo, the floating world, found in the mid-17th century classic Tales of the Floating World, Ukiyo Monogatari. That definition reads, living only for the moment, savoring the moon, the snow, the cherry blossoms, and the maple leaves, singing songs, drinking sake, and diverting oneself in floating, unconcerned by the prospect of imminent poverty, buoyancy, being buoyant and carefree. But at the same time, with their city under siege, viewers of the print would equally recall the original darker and more melancholy understanding of ukiyo. This is a different kind of character, meaning kind of the dark world, or this fleeting world, or this wretched world. A world, an age in which the teachings of the Buddha were no longer effective. The end of the world, mappo, and taking hints from the cherry blossoms that are taking hints from the cherry blossom tree in the picture here, they would be reminded of the ukiyo found in the Heian classic, The Tales of Ise Monogatari, in which talked about a very different type of ukiyo. Precisely because the cherry blossoms scatter, do we prize them. Nothing in this wretched world can be counted on to last. Well, even lacking knowledge of the classics, commoners knew how to read between the lines and search for double meanings and alternate realities. Which ukiyo defined the world of the Edo commoners in 1868? What was the central message of this particular ukiyo-e? The dark cloud, the yamikumo, hanging over their heads left no doubt. The world as they had known it was about to come to an end, and there seemed to be no escape. Negotiations in the spring of 1868 between Saigo Takamori, the head of the imperial army, and Katsukaishu, a Tokugawa retainer who was in charge of the Tokugawa military, or what was left of it. Negotiation between these two pro-Tokugawa and the imperial forces and the Tokugawa forces succeeded in arranging for a peaceful surrender of Edo Castle to the new imperial government. And that took place on May the 3rd. And for about a month and a half, a fragile peace held. The pro-Tokugawa Shogitai had swelled to nearly 3,000 men. Their headquarters were in Kaneji, and they remained in possession of Ueno, and the whole northeastern section of Edo was so-called enemy territory. The imperial army had control of the former castle of the Tokugawa, the area around Kaneji, actually the area that is now the Yasukuni Shrine was the Imperial Army's headquarters up there, where they had a staging station up on the top of the hill there, Kudan Hill, where they could look out and actually kind of glare at the Shogitai forces on top of Mount Ueno. They could kind of look at each other across the valley. Finally, the Imperial Army ordered an attack on the rebels. Saigo and Satsuma troops were in charge of the frontal attack at the Black Gate, the entrance to Kaneji Temple, the place that had, and it was the place that sustained the greatest casualties on both sides. The Saga domain was ordered to use their Armstrong cannon to bombard Kaneji from across Shinobazu Lake. That battle took place, I said July 4th, that's the 15th day of the 5th month. Kaneji was burnt to the ground. And a number of political cartoons took up this theme. They focused on the Battle of Ueno Hill, including this one here. This is Yama no Taisho, and then Hanabi no Nigiwai, kind of the sort of children playing King of the Mountain with fireworks. And King of the Mountain, Yama no Taisho, was a common children's game. It was easily used to depict, contest, who's going to be the winner. This mountain here is Ueno Hill. And on top of the mountain hill are Satsuma. You can actually, I won't go into detail, but from the kimono patterns, you can tell who is who. Choshu, perhaps you can see the chocho, the butterfly, choshu, and also the little huggy plant here. When the capital, or the domain had its headquarters, its castle in Hagi. This is Choshu, and then the imperial, you can see the imperial banner here. This is the emperor. The emperor wasn't there, it's just symbolically represented. But this anonymous and undated print depicts the victory of the imperial forces over the Shogitai loyalists. It was probably issued very soon after the bloody battle that dislodged the Shogitai and placed the entire city of Edo under imperial control. It showed the leaders of Satsuma and Choshu fighting their way to the top, and then proclaiming, I'm king of the mountain, or here is holding the emperor up here. They hold the boy emperor aloft and proclaim victory as king of the mountain. But there's still resistance. This is actually the domain of Aizu and Sendai, and other domains here are still kind of continuing the battle against them. And actually the civil war continues into the fall of 1868 in the Northeast. Aizu and supporters, they're not ready to give in. But this particular battle, Ueno Hill, was decided by superior firepower, the use of the Armstrong cannon. And the firecrackers that are going off here in the print surely made people recall the roar of the cannon, the barrage of rifle shots, the ensuing fire that engulfs the northeastern section of the city on that fateful summer day. It kind of looks like children are playing games, but really when you look at this print from the view of people at that time, this immediately recalls the reality of civil war, of a bloody war taking place right in the center of their city. And this is what Ueno looked like after the Civil War. The after the war, not only Ueno, but Kanneji is gone. And much of Tokyo itself was abandoned in ruins. Rebuilding took time. The 250 daimyo, who had were, a very major element of the population, and the daimyo and their men, the samurai, had abandoned their residence, gone back to their homes, their home domains, and leaving their yashiki, their domains, to be in ruins. Some of those areas, where they're rather large, were turned into military camps and training grounds. Some were turned into schools, like the Maeda domain became what is now Tokyo University, and some into cemeteries, like Aoyama Bochi, and some were simply abandoned. So what to do with Ueno? Well, here is a monument to the Dutch medical military advisor, Dr. Antonis Franciscus Boudwin. It was he who proposed the idea to turn the wasteland that was Ueno Hill after the Shogitai battle into a public park. He was actually approached for his ideas, and to help the government thought, well, we're going to turn this into a big medical hospital, a military hospital up on the hill. But Boudwin opposed the plan. He said, a world-class city requires a world-class park, a recreation and cultural center with trees and flowers and promenades and fountains and museums, exhibition halls. That was in 1874. So we have a medical doctor to thank for the transformation of this area into a park and not a hospital. Here's Ueno Park in 1881. The new park preserved aspects of Japan's past. Some of the buildings that had survived the Battle of Ueno Hill, the Toshogu, the Kiyomizu Temple, the Ueno Daibutsu, the 5-story pagoda, the Benten Shrine. Some of these actually were not entirely destroyed. But Ueno also came to serve as a showcase of the new modernizing Japan. This print shows the second National Exhibition of Domestic Industry in 1881. The exhibition hall here is built on the site of the main hall, the Kompon Chudo of Kanneji Temple, but this time to pray to the new gods of science, industry, and technology. And it's, of course, later replaced by the Tokyo National Museum. There's still a kind of fountain and forest and torf that you can see here. This is probably the area where the Shogitai battle was fought, and the main entrance like that. So the Seiyoken. This new park quickly became associated with Japan's westernization project, the Bunmei Kaika, civilization and enlightenment. And very important in civilization and enlightenment, how are you going to get strong? Eat beef. Food, the eating of beef. This was central to the symbolism of the new civilization and enlightenment. The Seiyoken was one of the first restaurants to serve beef, the taste of civilization. The Seiyoken opened first in 1872 in Tsukiji, but in 1876 moved to this Western-style building here in 1876, 2 years after the park opened. As Japan's first Western-style park needed a Western-style restaurant. It was a fashionable place for men and women to wear Western clothes to show off Japan's new commitment to Westernization, not only in food, but in museums, concert halls, art and music schools, and exhibition space for periodic display of the latest advances in industry and technologies. So I encourage you, explore Ueno Park. There's so much to see. Imagine yourself maybe not at Seoken, but at Starbucks. Right in the center of the park, here is the Tokyo National Museum here. That is, of course, where the Kan-Eiji was located. Imagine yourself, look around, and say stand up here where this guy is, and look out here, and then look all the way around. You'll find here is the, let's see, here we are at the, over here, the National Museum. You're looking here over there, and then just kind of take yourself a view. Oh, just go look all the way around, 360 degrees. You'll see the Tokyo National Museum in front of you, and its exhibition hall. You go to the right, you'll see the National Museum of Science and Nature. Right behind it is the Japan Academy. Then you go a little bit further to the right, the National Museum of Western History of Art. Over here, you can keep going. This has a very impressive collection of French Impressionist art. It's designed by Le Corbusier, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage List. Then comes the Tokyo Bunka Kaikan over here, and then the concert halls, opera, ballet. Then the Japan Academy of Arts over here. And then we can go, you'll even see a sort of a baseball field. There's the zoo over here. You can go up to the, we go turning around here, the Shogakudo, Japan's first music school, the Tokyo Metropolitan Art Museum, and just go to the Tokyo University of the Arts. Could just take a whole view of this area, and you will see it's really an amazing assemblage of past and present, of East and West, of history, of religion, entertainment, sports, culture, art, science, music. It's a pretty special place. It's a historian's paradise, a place that is a living testimony to the modern transformation of Japan. Unfortunately, this year, most of those buildings are closed, or admission is strictly limited due to the pandemic. Still, it's a good place to walk around and think about how this place has changed over time. When can we relax under Ueno's blooming cherry trees again? Next year? Let's hope. Let's see what the future brings. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bill. It's fascinating and to see how much there is in Ueno Park, and that we often don't see. So we do have some questions, and I'm going to ask with the first one from Laura. You mentioned earlier on when you were describing the political ukiyo-e of Ueno Park, the black dark cloud, the Yami Kumo. And can you talk a little bit about it and let us know maybe what its significance is in the print or culturally in Japan?
Well, I think it's almost like a universal symbol for bad things to come, dark things to come. You might immediately think of the sort of old, even in the Western cartoon, a kind of someone who walks around continually with a cloud of a rain cloud over his head. Mm-hmm. But it's been used in Japanese art as a symbol of bad things to come. And actually, even I think it was yesterday's Asahi Shimbun, the political cartoon, showed Suga trying to fight off the Corona devils, but over Suga was a Yami Kumo, a dark cloud was there, and he couldn't really get a good clear shot at those devils who were attacking him from above. So it's a I think a fairly immediately recognizable symbol of bad luck, bad fortune, foreboding. And certainly this year, 1868, was a year of a lot of unrest. It had led up from, actually the foreign threat was there, all from Perry's coming. So there are foreigners attacking. There were also a series of epidemics. There was the cholera epidemic in 1856. There was measles epidemics in 1862 and 63, and further. So there's those type of events. There are floods, famines, ikki. It was not just that one year, but the whole preceding period was a sort of kind of sort of catalog of bad events building up to 1868. So that black cloud almost was over the whole part of Japan after the coming of the West. But the interesting thing is that it really suddenly disappears. No one could foresee in 1868 what was going to happen after that, that the new government would pursue westernization projects, that industrialization projects would actually succeed in becoming, in 30 years, one of the great industrial and military powers of the world. That was not on people's minds or even dreams in 1868, but I guess perhaps kind of out of the depths of disaster comes sometimes new possibilities and open up new opportunities. And that's what happened after 1868.
Thank you. Bill, can you move to the next slide on your presentation, please?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you. So if anybody, just to remind everyone, if you have any questions, to use the chat function. I have a question from Rachel. Is Seiyokan, the restaurant, the first Western style restaurant, still running? Or
yes, you can go there. It's not the old wooden building.
Okay.
It's a concrete building, but it still has a beautiful view. It looks out over the Shinobazu Park, and you can. It also looks over to the zoo, and it has an interesting gallery of photographs inside there of what the place looked like in the past. And you can order, Meiji period beef stew. So it has on its menu some of the kind of the Bunmei Kaika foods, and you can have high tea there and so forth. But but it's still there, and still a rather interesting place to go and eat. A little bit different from Starbucks.
Thank you. Tomoko has a comment, and so thank you very much. Thank you for your very interesting presentation. As far as I read about Shogitai troop, their original causes and of what kinds of samurai members Shogitai was composed, none of them were official Bakushin, Tokugawa's vassals. The typical story that Ueno War was a battle between the old Bakufu troop and the new official troop of the Meiji government does not necessarily seem to be true. I think the story was with the legitimacy the new government firmer. To make I'd appreciate your view about this.
Yeah, the Shogitai makeup is a bunch of different forces, including some members of the former Shinsengumi, who came up from Kyoto and joined in with Shogitai, and some Tokugawa retainers, some people from the Hachioji Dojin kind of groups of people. So it's not the regular army of the Tokugawa. Most of those people fled once the castle was turned over under Otori Keisuke. They fled up into the northeast and joined up with some of the forces of Aizu and other of the northeastern domains. So it is a kind of the Shogitai were not the regular Tokugawa, for sure, not the regular official. And Katsukaishu was trying very hard to calm down the Shogitai. They were a sort of, they had a lot of support from the common people. And Shogitai actually had a patrol. We'll keep law and order from those, because a lot of the troops from Satsuma and Choshu were also ragtag and involved in looting and raping and so forth. So that on both sides, there's a lot of lack of discipline. And on the Imperial Army side, Saigo Takamori tried to keep people restrained. Katsukaishu tried to keep the Shogitai in order. And then orders came in, a man named Omura Masujiro from Choshu was sent and said, well, we have to take care of these Shogitai once and for all, even if it causes a fire. And it was this Omura Masujiro from Choshu who ordered the attack that took place in July.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. One more question from Steve. Steve is a big fan of cherry trees. I think we all are, and Ohanami. Thank you, Tomoko. So can you tell us a little bit more about the cherry trees in Ueno, where they are on the map, and if there are anything, any interesting bits of information about the history and future of the trees? Maybe we can go back to the previous slide to show this.
Well, cherry trees are about everywhere. And the original cherry trees were planted over on the close to the Ishinobazu Park area here. But that's back in the 17th century, like 1620s. Now, basically, when people go to Ueno to various cherry trees, you can start here, very close to where the statue of Saigo Takamori is, and all along this road, on both sides are cherry trees. Right now, there's big green fences, and so you can't get underneath them. And there's a two-way traffic. You can only walk this way or that way. So you can't wander around, and you have to walk with discipline and so forth like that. But that's the main areas. That, and then all in this area around here. But there are, and again, a lot of down here along the park. So there are about 3,000, no, sorry, I made the mistake earlier, about 1,000 cherry trees. And of course, they're not the original cherry trees. The life expectancy of a cherry tree may be 60, 70, 80 years. And they're even those Yoshino trees that he brought now are now the Some Yoshino, now the new breeds of trees. A lot, damage and rebuilding and so forth has taken place. I'm not sure if that helps, but you'll find, I think, as I said, this main thorough avenue that leads up from here to where the Kaneji is up here is on both sides is lined with cherry trees.
Thank you. Yes, it's Sakura Dori Avenue, which means cherry tree
look
avenue.
At it. So that's exactly what it says.
And I think earlier in the presentation, when you were showing right at the beginning, I think there was a little picture of how we have to walk on in the park today.
Yeah, you can go back to this.
I think it was right at the start.
Like this.
Yes, like
that's right from now. And this is the original trees in the area here, just below Kiyomizu Temple and Shinobazu Pond.
Yeah. One more question. Someone was asking about the zoo. When was the zoo put there, and was it part of the westernization of Japan?
Yes, very much so. The zoo was created in 1882, and it's the first zoo, the first Western-style zoo in Asia, and one of the first grand city zoos as well. So it's 1882, and it was immediately very popular, as it has been, of course, not just it had scientific research, but also, as you might as many zoos are, connected with imperial projects. The and later in the 20th century, as Japan developed colonies in Taiwan and Korea and Asia. Also, it was a showcase of also the sort of imperial or colonial animals that are kept. So I'll have to send you a later on the name of a book on the history of Ueno Zoo, which is just not in my head right this second, but an amazing book that deals with the whole history and of Japan's imperial zoo.
Thank you, Bill.
I'll try to find it myself here. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. One more question about this. Actually, this slide. Somebody's asking why is the branch of this tree round?
You can still see it like that.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's this is the Ueno. This is the Ueno Kyomizu Temple, and it's built as a replica of the Kyoto one. And it looks out. If you go over and look, they've recreated this scene. This is from an early 19th century woodblock print, but this scene, and of course, is that you can actually stand there now and look through that particular site straight at the Benten Shrine. It's of course it's man-made attraction, but it's a sort of kind of a viewpoint. People would stand up here, look through the hole, and see this. It led you straight to the Benten Shrine.
Yeah. Thank you. Steve is asking about what happened to Ueno Park during World War II.
I should get to you. I have to get you the name of this book. During World War II, the kind of tragic story is that the large animals were killed, fearing that they might get loose, run through the city. So the elephants, the tigers, the lions, and so forth were all slaughtered. So it's a rather sad story. And then after the end of the Second World War, I think about 1947, elephants came back. A little elephant, baby elephant from India, Hanako, was the main attraction in 1947, 48, as the zoo started to reopen. I like Hanako very much because I'm living near Kichijoji, because after her retirement from Ueno, she moved to the the Inokashira Zoo and lived there for many years till just about 3 or 4 years ago. Yes, it was not a part. The zoo was not really open to the public, and the resources were used for the war effort. And I mentioned even the scrap metal from Kaneji, from the Daibutsu, was melted down. I'm still trying to rack my brain for the
book. Excuse me.
I'll get it.
Did Ueno Park was it bombed heavily during the Second World War?
No. Not that there was no military target there, so it was not heavily. That area was not itself bombed directly, and it could be. And I haven't checked the burned out maps of Tokyo, the area there. But as I recall, and I might have to look up more exact information to say 100%. But as far as I know now, it wasn't bombed. Though the areas around the Shitamachi areas were really heavily bombed. In the northeastern part of Japan, where a lot of the small factories and industries and even were located. But I don't think it was a target on that March 10th, March 9th, 10th, 1945 major air raid on Tokyo.
Yeah. Thank you. We have another question, just a clarification. So you did say that they melted down the daibutsu, which means the statue of the Buddha itself.
Yes.
Yeah. So to use the metal for.
Yeah. The daibutsu was the big building in front of it was burnt, exposing the daibutsu. The daibutsu was only about 3 meters high.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not. It was not as a towering one as the one in Kyoto or in Nara. And then fires broke out, and the earthquake in 1923 actually dislodged its head. And so the head was preserved, but the body parts scrap were put in storage. And it was the scraps of bronze that were then requisitioned by the military for use of military melting down into guns and so forth in the 1940s.
I see. Thank you.
I have can I just mention this book now? Yeah. It's by Jared Miller, Ian Jared Miller, IAN JARED Miller, MILLER, called The Nature of the Beasts, Empire and Exhibition at the Tokyo Imperial Zoo. Mm. It's a very fascinating book, and I'm sorry it just wasn't on the top of my mind right then.
Thank you.
The nature of the beasts.
Bill, can you please move towards the end of the presentation so I can keep going? Thank you. So one last question, and then somebody's asking what started your fascination with Ueno Park. How do you?
Oh, well, I'm sure it's a statue of Saigo, and the incongruity of why is he dressed like that? Of course, I've gone to concerts there, I've gone to the museums and so forth, and it's but actually as a historian, and then I discovered, wow, that civil war took place right here, and nobody seems to know about it. There's a nice statue of Saigo. And then why doesn't he have military clothes on? So that kind of set me thinking and trying to look at the history of that particular spot. And that led me to then look at the deeper history of Ueno, and then the kind of, as I say, historians like to link past, present, and future. So I think the encounter with that statue was my starting point.
Yeah. One more question or comment. I heard Ueno and Yanaka, which is an area nearby in Tokyo. The Ueno's neighboring area with lots of temples were not targeted. There is an unfired bomb dropped behind Toshogu. Luckily, it was not fired.
Yes. Yes, and that's true. And that Yanaka area still preserves a lot of the old Japan, and you can just walk in there, from Ueno easily, and you can go and see the grave of the last Tokugawa shogun, Tokugawa Yoshinobu, right, maybe about a 15-minute walk from the Saigo Sakamori statue.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks everyone for all these questions. We're going to wrap it up very quickly. If you could move to the next slide. Thank you, Bill, again for such a fascinating talk. I'm not in Tokyo now. I'm in Nagano at the moment, but when I go back to Tokyo, I'll certainly go for a stroll in the Ueno area and visit the park with a new appreciation for what's around me. Now, I wanted to let everyone know that we will have a recording of this talk available for a short period of time on our Walk Japan Vimeo channel, and also we will send a link via via email. So if anyone who registered missed today's talk, who wants to see it, they can. The next topic, different, very different, but also very, very interesting. Shima, also one of our tour leaders, will introduce us to sake and teach us how to read sake labels so that we can choose the best sake for our meals. So read before you drink, unlocking the secrets of your sake bottle. This will take place on 22nd of April at 11 Japan Standard Time. And as I mentioned earlier in this on the talk, we will schedule talks at different times so that people on different time zones can join us. I'm going to quickly check for any last minute questions. That's all, a bunch of thank you from all of you. Thank you so much for attending today, and we'll see you on the 22nd at 11 a.m. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.